This is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and today I'm going to be looking at a game from the 2011 Russian Team Championship between Pavel Eljanov against Valerij Popov. And so Eljanov, a very solid 2700 player in his own right, shows how to transform a positional advantage into a tactical win and a great attack in this game. So it starts out with a Slav by black, and white plays a fairly typical treatment. As far as the opening moves go, Queen C2, very flexible opening move, doesn't commit, and waiting to develop that bishop on F1 in case black wants to take it into a semi-Slav by taking on D takes C4. And also possible, an aggressive line by Shabalov. I believe he kind of came up with this as far as playing G4 in some of these positions. So not seen so much at the very top level, but an interesting sideline, definitely. And so after B6, black is indicating that he's going to play bishop B7, bishop E7, rook to C8, probably castle, and play will develop along normal lines. And most likely white, bishop D2, possibly bishop E2, castles, rook C1, rook D1, something around that. And bishop D3 here, pretty similar to bishop E2 by all appearances, often transposes. And so now B3. And so here the bishop is definitely more useful on D3, as it's already pointing at that H7 pawn, and maybe in conjunction with knight E5 will start to accumulate some threats. So black goes ahead and plays H6 here to just not even worry about that. So now Queen C7 makes sense, just to get the queen off of the X-ray on the D file and go ahead and link the rooks together. So you can see white has a slight lead in development, and it happens occasionally in these lines that white does have a lead in development because he has already played C2, C4 in one move, whereas black is playing C7, C6, and then later to play C6, C5 will take two moves in a lot of these positions. A lot of the lines, they don't go into that, but many do as well. So Queen E2, maybe white wants to play bishop B1, put the queen on D3 and assemble a mating battery along the B1 to H7 diagonal. And Queen B8 to go ahead and get the queen off of the potential X-ray, just avoid any potential tactics on the C file. And so bishop B1, ready to put the queen, and knight E5. So just kind of getting the bishop out of the way, no problems, no tactical possibilities. And this also opens up the possibility of knight E5. So now with knight E5, there's pawn takes, and let's see here. Yeah, so pawn takes, and if queen takes, then white has a nice knight takes D5, and it's going to be very tough. It looks like black is just lost here. So that's the tactical justification behind knight E5. And so black first plays D takes C4, and after B takes C4, preserving the control of the center, specifically controlling this D5 square. It's definitely a good square. And now knight takes E5 and D takes E5. And so now it's a dynamic position, but you gotta prefer white. Black has his queen stuck on B8, and it's biting on granite against a pawn on E5. So the queen on B8 is out of play, and black just simply has white has an advantage in space. And so this is what I like about this game. I mean, it's not a great advantage, but it's a definite advantage, and definitely possible attacking chances across this diagonal. And so knight F8, and Eljanov he pretty much just milks the space advantage. And so now F5, and it seems like a similar tactic. If queen takes E5, most likely something along the lines of knight D5 involving F6 coming, possibly queen G4, and it just seems like black doesn't want to play with fire and open up this diagonal by taking the pawn on E5. So F5, definitely a good move, and white is rolling along with the attack. And so bishop G5, probably trying to get out the way of some F6 ideas, and knight E4 now. So now this bishop is open on this diagonal, and the other bishop is also pointing at the king. So not looking like so much fun for black here, as well as white is now threatening knight to d6, which would almost win an exchange as having a powerful knight there. So now bishop takes e4 and bishop takes e4. So now white has two attacking dynamic pawns on e5 and f5, as well as the advantage of the two bishops. And comparing this bishop on e4 against the knight on f8, it's going to be unquestionable that white has an advantage. But the question is, material is equal. Black has his bishop pointing down on e3, and if he can try to gain some activity somehow, maybe a6 and b5 is a little too slow. If he can defend and gain activity, maybe he can hold a draw here. So now rook to e1, most likely to defend the pawn on e3, kind of regroup, get all your pieces ready to attack, and a6. So it seems like the only real plan to get any kind of counterplay is going to be to a6 and b5 and try to open up the queen side. But it's going to be difficult with this bishop controlling so many squares. And so the rook was moved to d7 to probably be able to defend laterally in some lines. So that was probably the idea there, maybe to play rook d8 and to invade on the d file. And queen g4. So now white is really picking up. After playing the rook to e1 to defend the pawn on e3, now threatening h4 and some kind of f6, maybe a rook lift to f3 kind of steamroll. And so now rook d2 right away. And yeah, I mean, rook d2, black has to generate some kind of counterplay. White doesn't want to trade any pieces, anything rook f2. That's just not what he wants to do. I mean, it's playable, but it's certainly not what he's got in mind. And so he goes ahead with bishop c3. Just, you know, what does this a2 pawn matter? The action's taking place on the king side. And rook takes, and now h4. So just taking it simple and logically, by white just wants to attack. And after rook a3, that's a very bad sign for black, because the idea is most likely that if pawn takes, rook takes, and let's say if pawn takes, either way in this position, it's going to be hard for white to not allow the black queen to come back into play by taking on e5. And that's definitely not what he wants. So I think that's the basis of black's idea, taking the worst of all evils. But even this, I mean, this looks pretty bad. Maybe f6. Okay, black isn't immediately losing. He's got some pawns on the queen side, but this, yeah, okay, doesn't look so good. So that was probably the idea with rook a3, and also to put pressure, maybe to come against the e3 pawn, which would be white's main weakness now. And instead, Eljanov finds a nice alternative to open up the position and open up his rooks into the game now. And after knight takes and queen f5, and this combines a double attack on f7 and on h7, which black can defend neither. So if g6, he's just going to take f7. So that's the main idea. So now after queen c7, so he's just got to allow, he's got to defend on f7, and white penetrates with queen h7 check, and now he takes the bishop on g5. And so now in this position, black resigned, and I can only imagine, because if you know rook takes c3 is going to lead to g takes h6, and black is going to be toast there. And as far as, let's say, knight to g5 check, it looks to me that check, king e7, and now queen takes g7. And white is still up a piece here, so black's going to have to spend a tempo getting that piece and corralling it down. So if if you're going to be down a piece, you're done skis. So if rook takes c3, bishop d5, and this is just, there's no way black's going to survive in any of these positions. And going back, if pawn takes, I think just bishop g6 works. This seems to win rather nicely, and there's no way that I can see for black to parry the threat of queen h8 and rook f7 mate. Just that simple. So a very nice game by Eljanov, transforming the space advantage into a dynamic attack. And this is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and thanks for tuning in.